It's good to have you join us, and welcome to Off the Press, where we take a look at the stories making headlines on all our national dailies. And of course, we don't stop there. We go ahead to analyze them. And joining me this morning to do justice to the analysis, I have Tubosun Akeju. He's a reputation manager. It's good to have you join us.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
All right. It's good to see you. It's been a while.
Yeah.
All right. Let's jump on it. Our first national daily this morning is the Nation newspaper. Top story on the Nation, the biggest story. DCP, 12 others dead as Shiites protest in Abuja. It's the biggest story, and we can see a grim day. Dr. Fayemi and Prince Abiodun in the middle, and all students and current students of Christ School Ado-Ekiti sing a school anthem on a funeral service, at a funeral service yesterday. That's also a picture on the Nation newspaper. Now let's go to the top left of the Nation newspaper. Why new wage is delayed by federal government. You can find that on page 7. And of course, COSA dig to oversee alleged rape probe. That's also on page 8 of the Nation newspaper. More stories in the Nation newspaper. 2 mining workers dead, 1 injured in Ibadan quarry accident. But let's quickly look at the biggest story, which is the DCP and 12 other people dead as Shiites protest in Abuja. A core member who was reporting for Channels TV also yesterday lost his life in the line of duty. The antecedent of all of this is that someone was held, and the courts had been asking for this person to be released, but the federal government, for reasons best known to them, have held onto this man, and his people have continuously been asking for his, release, and now we have a situation on our hands.
The Shiite issue in Abuja, the protest and the death, is a very, very unfortunate situation. And I was reading through the timeline of protest and major issues with Shiite, and I think that something is wrong with our security apparatus. Something is definitely wrong. Because one is, how did that protest proceed without any sign that it was going to be that violent? Just not their first protest. Not all their protest has been violent, but a couple and a good number has been violent.
Yeah.
So how did this particular one proceed without them knowing that it was violent? The last time they got too close to the National Assembly, if not, they got so close that they even disrupted activities around the National Assembly. And now we have a DCP dying, 12 others, the police were shooting sporadically. I think that while the issue about El Zakzaki being held against court order and all of that remains a subject of debate, because I was reading somewhere else this morning where agents that I believe to be working with the federal government claim that there's also another court order. There are more issues about him being held, trying to justify the reasons why it was being held. That, the court order that released him is different from, I think they filed other cases against him, which usually happen in Nigeria, use technicalities, to circumvent some court orders or the law. Beyond that, I think we have a major security issue in our hands, because, how did a protest generate so much that a DCP is shot dead, 12 people dying, a protest? I think that the things we should be worried about is, number one, again, how tight and intelligent is our security system. Number two is, we must find a lasting solution to the engagement with the Shiites so that we don't have another Boko Haram or Islamic extremism aside. If you look at that timeline, they have all the signs of extreme religious practices. They have all the signs. One of them that I read, which happened, I think, maybe in 1997 or thereabout, was a woman that was decapitated because she was accused of cleaning a baby with pages of the Quran. There's another one, I think 2007, there's Shiite and there's another Islamic group, Sunni. The leader of the Sunni was also killed. So they have all the signs. And we will not create desolation and call it peace. So I think government should really, really proceed with caution and find a lasting solution to the problem with the Shiites.
Do you think government should have spoken earlier? Do you think they should have dealt with this before it spiraled out of control? Would there have been a better chance of dealing with this?
I more than know that government should always speak, which they don't do. I mean, I'm a strong advocate, and my line of work requires me to do certain things, which I call policy marketing. In Nigeria, is one of the things that government doesn't do. Some policies very good, some actions of government very good for the general good of the public, but because government doesn't come out to properly educate people about it, they will lose control of the issue. And I think that that's part of the problem government is having here. They've not done enough to engage stakeholders, to educate people about the situation of things. There are ways that you talk to people and they know that you have their best interests at heart, which is one of the arguments that government has put forward to say that, you know, even for the safety of El Zakzaki, it's better to keep him in custody. But if that is not properly and well communicated, nobody's going to be. If the man is requesting, you know, to go and see doctors, you know, to travel out of the country, his health is at risk. I mean, like one of the senior lawyers said, if he's not alive, he cannot be tried, even if you want to take him to court. So allow him to attend to his health. So I think that, again, government they have to wake up and smell the coffee, because it seems like they're living in denial.
Okay, moving on. This day newspaper top stories here say Nigeria Siemens sealed deal to deliver 11,000 megawatts in 2023. Another headline or something we should be crossing our fingers on?
What exciting.
Okay, more stories you can find on page 6. Stock market loses 369 billion in 5 days on sentiments. Wow. And the big story for today still continues. Big spread. Police chief and 7 others killed as Shiites protest turns violent. 2 ASPs and others injured. 54 suspects arrested. And of course, they resist breakdown of law and order, Buhari tells IG. Just something of note, worthy of note, there are disparity in the figures on all the different national dailies. The Nation said 12 this day, saying about 7 others killed instead of 12. I mean, we always have this disparity in the numbers, but I just thought it was worthy of note. Now, APC loses bid to reclaim Zamfara elective positions. PDP governors hail Supreme Court's refusal to upturn the verdict. And the head of service, Oyeta, has said Labour is making unrealistic minimum wage demands. Let's start with that. This promise was made on the heels of Next Level, which was during the campaigns, and here we are. They're still saying we haven't seen our monies, even though the federal government said they were going to release monies. But now the head of service is saying that Labour is making unrealistic minimum wage demands. I'm wondering what she means by that.
I would like key and operational word there, like to believe that perhaps the head of service was quoted out of context, because I think that's quite an insensitive statement to make. It's very obvious why the Labour Congress and the pressure groups are making this demand of government, and it stems from the fact that there are people who are feeding fat in government. So why can't the workers feed fat? It is also logical to know that if the microscopic few, like I like to refer to them, who are in government are feeding fat, the ideal thing to do would be to reduce those few that are feeding fat, because if you ask the large number of people that work for government to start receiving something that comes close or that is commensurate, what you will have is that we are going to increase our already over bloated operational cost as a country. So, but I think that it still doesn't give credence, or it still doesn't allow the head of service to say that they are making unrealistic, because that the sentiment
but
and the nuances.
Could the word unrealistic also be that there are states who are not economically viable? There are states who have still been struggling. For example, when Rauf Aregbesola was governor, with all of the tranche of payments of the Paris Club refund, he was still unable to pay salaries. Yeah. And this was when he was pegged at 18,000. Now we're looking at 30,000 naira. Maybe unrealistic here is saying there are people who might never be able to do this.
You see, when you're, again, you know, I
maybe, and I'm playing the devil's advocate.
Yeah, here. Well, it's all right to do that. Again, I refer to the sentiment of the issue. Logically, what's going to happen is increase that money to whatever you want to increase it to. If the arm of government or if the civil service is not as productive as it's meant to be, what you're going to have is a bigger problem in the society. Inflation, talk about it, you know. So she's kind of right. But if you're going to play to the sentiment of what led to this request, then it's an insensitive statement to make. So
what you're saying that maybe we need to downsize the labor force, especially for civil service, being that the word unproductive here is the operating word. Maybe a lot of them are not necessarily doing what they should be doing. Or do we have duplicity of departments and agencies? Could that be part of the problem?
The civil service is in a critical mess. But I think to solve this problem, again, going back to sentiment, is to first reduce, you know, the over-bloated allowances of the people at the top, if you allow me to put it. And then we can now come and, because if you downsize the civil service, you're going to create a problem. There's already a large, you know, the unemployment rate is already high. So the first thing to do is not, let's first, you know, appeal to the sentiment, you know, get the economy working better, and then we can now consider saying, oh, we need productivity, and then we can find a very, very fair and empirical way to go about it, which takes me to another story there about the stock market. The sentiment is, again, talking about sentiment. The sentiment there is appointment of ministers. That's all. A lot of people cannot make moves because they don't know who's going to the steering sheet.
Head what ministry
exactly.
or what department.
And it's rather unfair. The last time we had this type of issue, you know, we were, I mean, the economy was already in a serious pain. Let me use that word.
But why are we surprised? It took us 6 months the last time. Why are we surprised? I mean,
are we supposed to be getting better?
Shouldn't we be, you know, just looking forward to whenever Mr. President decides to budge? Because, I mean, when you're working with these kind of information, you work with antecedents, and the president's antecedents is that it took 6 months in the first tenure to get us cabinets, and we were hoping that after 6 months we were going to get amazing people, square pegs in square holes, but you know what the situation was. So maybe he's trying not to make the same mistake, and it might take longer, or maybe even shorter time. Maybe next week we might even hear something.
I see what you're trying to do there. So
I'm just saying.
I'll just pass, but I think it's very sad that we're about to repeat another mistake. 359 billion in the Nigerian economy is no joke. And just because people are meant to be appointed. You know, there are so many quotes that we hear these days, which is like, it's better, you should fail faster. So it's better for the president to actually select these people, get it going. If they're not working, get them out. That's it. It's not a do or die.
I'll ask one more question and then we'll move on. How often have we seen the president kick anybody out?
Not very often, exactly. But he has done it before, so I think he can do it.
Okay, let's move on to the Punch newspaper. Top story here says, DCP reporter 2 Shiites killed. The numbers keep reducing, don't they? It says 11 protesting members were killed in Abuja, IMN. 54 members arrested in FCT mass protest. Police, so giving 2 different reports. And we can see on the cover of the Punch newspaper pictures of police officers lifting a dead man into a police van. It's really crazy. Scenes of the clash between the police and members of the Islamic movement of Nigeria. And going under that story, still on the Punch newspaper, don't intervene in Edo crisis, youth warn reps. This one says Nigerian people shot dead in South Africa. Oh, yet another dead body in South Africa. And Dakolo's IG orders case transfer to Lagos. Still in the Punch newspaper, top right of the Punch newspaper, federal government minimum wage template will impoverish workers, says Labour. And on the top right, or the top left, I beg your pardon. Herdsmen raise vigilantes in Ondo government. Afenifere kick. So that's one of our stories in our news bulletin this morning, where there is a form of vigilante. I think that was Ondo State or so. And these vigilantes have ID cards, allegedly. Ondo State. And they have cards, and they say that they're vigilantes in Ondo State, and the people have kicked against it. And I'm wondering, vigilantes, should they not be somewhat overseen by the police and the government of the day?
See, when you wrongly diagnose an issue, it's very possible that you will use the wrong drug, or you try to, use the wrong solution. When the issues of kidnapping and Fulani Herdsmen came up, and I think I said it on this program one of the days, that we don't have a Fulani Herdsmen issue. No, we have a security issue. So what has happened now is that some people, which is probably the Maeti Allah, or let's just call them the Fulani Herdsmen, have taken the responsibility on themselves that we're not going to allow you to continue to say that we are the bad guys here, because some of us are just here for business. So we're going to look and we'll purge the system ourselves if the people that you've put in charge won't purge the system. And then they've now formed, this vigilante group, and then that's what you see that is happening. And then, the Yoruba elders,
armed with guns and machete. Who gave them the license to carry the guns and machete?
Let's be realistic. We always see these guys with their sword, with their machete, with their sometimes.
So where do you know how much an AK-47 costs?
I don't know if they saw them with an AK-47.
Well, that's what's in the news.
Yeah, and so
it has to be investigated by the police commissioner in that state. Absolutely,
but we all know the reality of the cases. We see herdsmen with, at the minimum, on the street, and you can get a license for, a barrel gun. You can't get a license for a rifle. So I'm not sure that you saw them with AK-47, but you can get a gun for it. But more often than not, if you see any herdsman, you would, at the minimum, even the very young ones, you see them with a sword. And,
I think they call it daggers.
Well, I
think that's what they call it.
So what has happened there is that they've put themselves together, and then they've said, we're going to purge it. And it's very, very dangerous, because today they are there to say we are not the one causing the problem. Tomorrow they might be, in a situation where they have to defend themselves, and then the whole thing will spiral down into more crisis.
Let's quickly talk about a student who was killed in South Africa. This is more like the third person in the space of how many months? The last one was the insurance boss, whose matter is still under investigation. Do you think that Nigerian government, or better still, how best do you think we need to deal with this issue in consonance with the South African government, because too many people are dying at the hands of South Africans?
First of all, charity begins at home. So if in Nigeria the government does not show any sense of respect for human life, how do you expect foreign countries to do that? I think that's the major problem. So before we go into any diplomatic jargon or policies or anything, the first thing is, how does the Nigerian government treat its own citizens? That picture in front of Punch is very sad. When you're using trucks to carry dead bodies. Insane society. I mean, can you please just give a bit of respect to the body? Where are the body bags? Where are the ambulances to get to? So you don't have respect for people.
That's a good question. Where are they?
I don't know. I'm not in government. So if you don't show respect for human life in your country, don't expect. South Africa is getting really out of hand, I must say. And I think that, I haven't said that charity begins at home. I think government needs to pay special attention to that. There has to be a lot of security guide and policies in place to also put the South African government on their toes, because it seems like every other week now we hear news of someone being killed or something happening in South Africa.
It's really sad. Well, finally, let's look at the Vanguard newspaper quickly, because we have very little time. Insecurity, we aren't bastards, we'll protect our people, says Southwest governors at Olakunri's burial. That's on the top right of the Vanguard newspaper. Right under that, 2019 polls, we can't order fresh elections in Zamfara. Supreme Court tells APC. COSA, IGP orders DIG to take over investigation of Pastor Fati Oyibo. And Malafia, the leprous RUGA policy is in letter and spirit a gross violation of Grundnorm that defines our constitutional civil association. That's a mouthful. And rape allegation, inside story of police invasion of Timi Dakolo's home. And of course, again, my favorite Mr. and Mrs. on the Vanguard newspaper. You should pick up a Vanguard newspaper. I cannot read the contents of Mr. and Mrs. right now. It's funny, but a bit offensive. All right, so let's quickly talk about the Southwest Governor's reaction, and of course the issue of RUGA. It's called I mean, it's the man is pretty angry about it. But do you think that RUGA probably was missold or it was misinterpreted when it was presented?
It was not sold at all. I think that, like I like to say, we're military hangover, which is the fact that we, during military, you have decrees. So the head of state wakes up one morning and, announces that this is what we are going to do, and that's what it is. In democracy, it doesn't work that way. The process of policy marketing require that you engage stakeholders, feel their pulse, pain points, nuances, the things that will cause issues before you go to market with a particular idea. That's what should have been done with RUGA. The basic principle of RUGA, is another name is just ranching. How they've gone about it, the jury is out on that. But the basic principle is, what? And I feel that one of the problems federal government was trying to solve is that it's sometimes very annoying, and if you've experienced it before, you're driving on the road, and this has happened to me in different parts of Nigeria, Abuja, Ibadan, Lagos, and then you will have to actually wait for those cars to pass. So if you're saying, we're going to create a space for all of you to stay, we don't want to see you on the road.
Why do they have to create a space for them?
Again,
who creates spaces for the poultry farmers and the owners of chickens and snails? Who does that? It's a private business. Should it become government's problem?
Again, I'll go back to that phrase. You don't create desolation and call it peace. If a problem becomes big, you have to find a way to solve it. If one of the ways to solve it is ranching, which does not mean that, or does not necessarily mean that you are going to dash them or give them that land for free. If you think that one of the problems is, they don't have money to pay for a large piece of land, let them pay per month. Let's go ahead. For example, the abattoir, which is the example I keep using, you can't wake up and start an abattoir anywhere. There are designated places for abattoir. And it's because of the health challenges and the monitoring that is required, for that practice. So if you want to bring that same method into ranch and say, we'll create a space for you guys, no moving around. If you see you moving around, you won't have any excuse because we've already created a space for you. Then that works. But if people are not properly engaged, they will raise a fuss, and that's always happening.
Well, we're out of time, but quickly, let me just run through the top stories on today's Complete Sports. It's £80 million or no Zaha deal. That's Palace telling Arsenal they reject Ghana's 65 million plus Nelson bid for player. You know that Arsenal is still pricing like they're pricing tomatoes in the market, unfortunately. That's my team. This one says PSG line up new £860 a week, or £860,000 a week Mbappe deal. The French star has no plans to renew that contract. And goal shy, Iheanacho seeks first goal in 10 months. Eagles forward misses sitter in Fox's last preseason win, and Barca set to open Messi contract talks. Well, that's it on the Complete Sports, and that's it also on Off the Press this morning. It's been a very interesting conversation with Tuboson Akeju, Reputation Manager, speaking with us this morning. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
And I'm Mary Anako, and have a lovely day and enjoy the rest of our programs.